Okay, so this is the Objectivity and Values in Sociology lesson, page 197 to 201, and from the Theory chapter. And again, a reminder that this is paper 1, a 10 marker, and paper 3, a 10 and a 20. So when you look at this photograph, there are essentially two different ways that you can look at it. You can describe the facts. You can be objective. You can say what you see. You can say that there's a malnourished child, probably in a country that is poor, a country with a government that isn't looking after its citizens or isn't able to. You can describe the bird, the vulture. You can hypothesize what might happen should the terrible happen and this child pass away. That would be objective. You would be looking at it without trying to use your opinions and your beliefs and your emotions. The emotive way of looking at it, the emotional way of looking at it, would be to express horror and disgust at how terrible this situation is, at how we can allow this to happen as a species, and what we should therefore do, and it could galvanize you into political action. So we've got an objective response, cold, rational, descriptive, and we've got a subjective response, emotional, based on beliefs and opinions. Our values fit into the second category. It is an emotional response. If we use our values, we are saying, I believe that this is wrong. I believe that this situation needs to be dealt with. If we're being objective, we don't use our values at all. We just simply describe what we see. We don't say what we think should happen. We say what is happening. So in sociology, there is a key question. Should we use values in our research? And the most important thing to get straight away is understanding what values are. So they are beliefs, ideas, prejudices, preferences, opinions, anything to do with your own personal ideas about something. They link to your values, what you believe to be good and right. Values are subjective. They are based on opinion. They are our beliefs about what is good or bad, right or wrong, worthy of study or irrelevant, not worthy of study. And there are two main schools of thought in sociology, and I think you probably should be able to guess this from looking at positivism and interpretivism. The positivists say that we should not use values at all, that personal beliefs, that subjective opinions, have no place in science. To link back to the previous session, it doesn't matter if you believe the boiling point of water to be 101 degrees C, because the boiling point of water is 100 degrees C. So bias and subjectivity and opinion are not useful in science. However, the other perspective, the interpretivists, suggests that values can and should be used in sociology because ultimately they will increase our understanding of society. They will increase our validity. And this session is about explaining those positions. So we're going to look at the positivists, who say that we should not use values. Our values should essentially be the same thing as facts. Facts should be our values. Weber, who's going to say that values are different to facts and they should be separated. That's why he's the father of modern interpretivism. Gouldner, who's going to say that value-free sociology is dangerous, so positivism is dangerous according to Gouldner. And Becker is going to say that value-free sociology, that is positivism, is discriminatory. Just a quick word on this terminology, value-free. Value-free means that you are trying to be objective. Value-laden, literally meaning to carry your values, means to be subjective. And so Weber, Gouldner and Becker are all value-laden and positivists value-free. Okay, sociology should uncover the scientific laws about how society functions. We saw this last session, and we should use this knowledge to fix problems. So therefore, sociology is an attempt to discover the one correct society. Individual values and beliefs, so your own beliefs about how society should be, should not matter, because science should be able to work out the one correct society. So your biases and your subjective beliefs should not be used. Marx was a positivist. At least many people think he was. And Marx used official statistics and quantitative data to argue that capitalism was objectively, scientifically bad. And his argument was that objectively, so inevitably, according to the facts, there was going to be a class revolution and we would get to a utopia, a perfect world of a classless society. And for Marx, a classless society is not something he would like, it's something that is the best form of society. It is objective. So if somebody comes to Marx and says, I don't believe in a classless society, I don't think it's a good thing, Marx would say, you are objectively wrong, you are scientifically wrong, it is the perfect form of society. Okay, Weber is the first person to challenge Marx and Durkheim and the other positivists on this. If you look down to the bottom left, you'll see data collection and testing. What Weber is going to outline here is that sometimes values are useful and sometimes they are not. So what Weber suggests is that when you're collecting your data and you're testing your hypotheses, you should not use your values. So when you're collecting your quantitative data or designing your questionnaires or interpreting your official statistics or collecting your official statistics, values are not important there. You shouldn't use your beliefs. Weber would not have been a fan of participant observation, for example. However, the other three top arrows point to where Weber thinks values are important and should be used. The choice of your method. Should you use questionnaires? Should you use structured interviews? Should you use official statistics? Weber suggests that that decision is based on your opinion, on your beliefs, and so you're using values in sociology. Second one down, interpreting data. When you actually collect your data, one person will see one thing and another person will see another. And this is because we use our opinions and our beliefs when we are interpreting data. So we are not being value-free there, we're being value-laden. And the final one, values in wider society and the consequences of research. Weber argues it's possible to do this objective data collection, but then who decides what we do with that data? Who decides what conclusions we draw and what policies we put in society? It will be our values that will determine what policies we put in to help society run. Okay, now to build on Weber, in the research process, there are actually loads of different ways that values come into it. So that's subjective opinion, our decisions based on our own beliefs. Choosing the topic of research, as Weber mentioned, interpreting the findings, selecting which findings to include in the report. Sometimes sociologists collect a huge amount of data. Not all of it goes into the final report. How do you decide what to keep in and what to leave out? Only by making a choice, by making a decision based on your own beliefs. Getting funding we'll talk about in a bit more detail later. Choosing the actual method, recording responses, how do you record them, in what format, quant or qual, etc. Deciding what report will be used for, as Weber mentioned, what do you actually then go on to do with it to help society or to hinder society. Operationalizing key concepts, that just means how do you make your key concepts measurable? Again, that's a decision. How are you going to do that? That's a decision based on values. Selecting appropriate questions. What hypothesis do you choose in the first place? What questions are you going to ask? Are you interested in ethnicity and education? Well, if you're interested in it, that is a value. Deciding where report will be published. So who do you send that report to? Which magazine are you going to publish it in? Which journal are you going to publish it in? Are you going to send it to the government? Are you going to send it to a charity? All of those are personal decisions based on values. And so we come then almost to the second part of this, which is we've seen that sociology probably does need to use values. I think Weber is right here that values do come into sociology. The early positivists are probably wrong that it can be a pure science. But should sociology be value-free? Should we try and be as objective as possible, as value-free as possible? Or should we just accept our values and go with them? Should we follow the interpretalists? Well, we're going to look at two perspectives here that argue we should be value-laden. Obviously, the value-free side of this, the positivists are going to say, no, we should not use our values. So here's our first problem with positivism. Sociology wants to be scientific, argue the positivists. That means no values, not using your values at all, being objective like a scientist. Because sociological research is available to all people to do, and all countries, all organisations, this means that powerful groups are the only ones who can actually afford to conduct the proper research. So, sociology by itself, completely value-free, just being scientific, ends up becoming a tool for the powerful to oppress the weak, because only powerful groups, governments, corporations, are able to afford to do the research and have the practical means to do the research. Unemployed people are not doing sociological research. And as we'll see, that means sociological research is often weighted or biased towards powerful groups. Okay, Gouldner. Now, Gouldner is a committed sociologist. It's not a wildly important key term, that. Committed sociology is just a key word which refers to sociology which encourages the use of values. It's sociology with a political purpose. Gouldner suggests that value-free sociology is impossible and undesirable. So he would follow Weber in saying it's impossible, but he is going to add on to this that it's actually undesirable. We don't want it to be value-free. It's impossible because the value of the sociologist or their paymasters are bound to be reflected. And that's what we just saw before with Weber and that other diagram with the sticky labels. We are always going to end up using our values. But it's undesirable because without values, research tends to be sold to the highest bidder. And this is what we were just looking at before. Now, we need a good example of this. Sociologists have used their understanding to help cigarette companies to sell more of their product, even in one case to children in Africa. Now, if you're a positivist and you look at social research as a way of trying to determine facts, then one possible social fact would be, if you market cigarettes in this way, more children will smoke. Now, should you do that research? Should you sell that research to a cigarette company that then goes and tries to make children smoke cigarettes or to encourage them to smoke cigarettes? I think most of us would say that that was completely wrong sociological research, ethically disastrous. But a positivist can't say that. A positivist has to say, well, you've discovered a social fact, thank you for adding to our scientific knowledge. Gouldner says that is unconscionable, that is totally wrong. And so we must use our values to prevent sociology being sold to powerful groups. Okay, Becker is an interactionist, he's an interpretivist, so he's a labelling theorist. You actually meet him briefly in the Sociology of Education. And what Becker argues is slightly different to Gouldner, although they are on the same team. We need values in order to take the side of the underdog. Now, an underdog is, you might have heard it in sport, so if Manchester United play a team from the Conference League, then that team from the Conference League would be the underdog. And in society, the underdog is anybody who is expected to lose. It's the weak, it's the poor, it's the oppressed. It would include disabled people, it would include unemployed people, some ethnic minorities, people who are oppressed by the power. What Becker is arguing here is that the perspective of the ruling class is the one that sociology reflects. It often looks at large macro statistics, using official statistics to look at the unemployment rate and to look at the rates of GCSE grades for certain ethnicities and groups. And it doesn't actually reflect the perspective of the underdog. It doesn't understand the underdog. It doesn't go through the process of verstehen with the weak, the poor, and the oppressed. So what Becker argues is that we need to use our values, our beliefs, and our morality to be interested in these neglected minorities. We need to study patients with mental health problems. We need to study gang members. We need to study the homeless. But we need to study them with our own values. Because otherwise, if we're value-free, we'll end up with a sociology that is just for the ruling class and by the ruling class. So for Becker, this story needs to be told. The story of minorities, the story of the underdog needs to be told to redress the balance. And for Becker, that meant interpretivist methods, unstructured interpretivist methods. Okay, and we've had sort of running through this. This isn't a second appeal per se, but it's just to make this really explicit. If you are in any way persuaded by the positivist account that sociology can be a science, this will probably disabuse you of that notion. Funding. The funder has values which influences the choices or values of the researcher. All sociological research is funded by somebody. It is funded by the government, or it is funded by universities, or it's funded by corporations. And they have values. The funder has values. Governments, for example, prefer positivist research methods because they like to have large sample sizes. Now that's a value. Preferring positivism is an opinion. It's a choice. So the researcher themselves is often the hostage of their funder. A person working in the government has to do what the government tells them to do when it comes to sociological research. And so the values of the funder determine the research itself. And secondly, the researchers may choose topics which get funding but are not important simply to gain funding. If you work for a charity, you know that certain types of research are going to end up with you receiving more money. And so you're going to choose those topics of research. A good example would be if you're going to research gangs. At the moment, gangs is a moral panic. It's in the news cycle a lot. If you're going to do research into gangs, you're much more likely to get funding than if you do research into disabilities, because people aren't particularly interested in disabilities in the media narrative at the moment. Okay, now a final Peel paragraph on this that you'll see in the textbook is theoretical perspectives. And in many ways, this one is just really straightforward. It should be fairly obvious to us that values come in to almost everything sociologists do. And the most obvious first place for this is what perspective you are from. Marxists have used their values because they believe in a class-ridden society which is dominated by capitalism. Feminists believe in the patriarchy. They believe that the patriarchy exists. Sure, they argue that they have evidence for it, objective evidence for it, but becoming a feminist is a subjective choice. You can do it or you could not do it. It's not like the boiling point of water. You can choose to be a feminist. Functionalists believe that society works like an organ, like organs in the body. Institutions work like organs in the body. They believe that society works well and functions well. Positivists believe in being objective. Now that one is slightly paradoxical, slightly difficult to get your head around, but being a positivist is a choice based on values. Think of this. I believe that we should not use our values. Uses values, because you have to say that you believe in not using values. So even positivists are using their values. And interactionists say that, just like Becker, they believe that the best way of studying society is from the bottom up, from looking at the stories of the people who are weak and oppressed. Okay, so let's summarise what we've done here. We've gathered together 4 main peels with a final 5th one on theoretical positions if you need it. Positivist use of values in sociology, no. Sociology should be objective. Weber, sometimes. Data collection value-free, but all the conclusions and policies are value-laden. Gouldner, yes, we should use our values, because otherwise value-free sociology results in the domination of the powerful. Becker, yes, we should use our values, because value-laden sociology protects the underdog. If you use your values, you can protect those weak members. And theoretical positions, yes, because all sociology is competing values. Now, in terms of analysis, you're spoilt for choice here because you can just pretty much analyse any individual peel with any other individual peel. It can be either supporting or it can be contradicting. Exam questions, these are fairly straightforward. Outline and explain 2 arguments which suggest sociology must use values. Gouldner, Becker, Weber, and also your theoretical perspectives would all work as your P for those. And evaluate the claim that sociology must be value-free You would definitely want to include your positivist paragraph in there because of the question, but then you could simply do 2 other paragraphs from our list. Hope that was helpful. Thank you for listening.